Where can you find a secret staircase in a creepy old castle? At Dracula's castle in Transylvania.
Welcome to McKenzie's Travel.
Hi, I'm Laura McKenzie, and welcome to Romania, one of the most fascinating countries in Eastern Europe. And you know, looking around now, it's kind of hard to believe that it's less than 20 years out of communist rule. But it's the pre-communist history of medieval villages and fairy tale castles that's the big draw today. For example, this is Peleș Castle, located about halfway between the capital of Bucharest and a province I know you've heard of, Transylvania, home of Dracula's castle. And we're gonna see it all. So, if you're ready, Romania, here we come. Romania is a country that's inspired lots of stories and fairy tales, whose history is embellished with romantic legends of kings and castles and religious conquests. Now, I know you've heard of Romania, but you're saying, where is it again? So, it's located in southeastern Europe along the west coast of the Black Sea and bordered by Bulgaria, Hungary, Serbia, and Ukraine. In fact, this area was one of the most fought over in all of Europe. It's true, there's a lot of kingdoms that have battled to call Romania their own, most notably the Roman, Ottoman, and Hungarian empires. And it's these struggles that shaped the history and landscape of this beautiful country. But for all its storied past, by far the most romantic and misunderstood of its provinces is Transylvania. Yes, just the name brings vampires and werewolves to mind, doesn't it? But it's not shrouded in fog and mystery. It's actually a beautiful part of the country, with the Carpathian Mountains overlooking densely wooded valleys. Here, medieval towns and castles still stand, the perfect backdrop to its legendary folklore. But as we all know, there's no stories more associated with Transylvania than the legend of Count Dracula. But wait, every story has a beginning, and there are other stories waiting to be told first. The most striking thing about Transylvania is the way that many of the towns in the province still look as if they're right out of a storybook. One of the largest and most popular cities is Brașov. Surrounded on three sides by mountains, it's a favorite destination, not only for its history, but surprisingly, for the ski resorts just above it. Brașov is probably the most visited town in Transylvania because it's so convenient to all the day trips and excursions that you're going to want to do, including Dracula's castle. This is Concert Square, and it's the happening place to be, especially in the early evening. Lined with shops and cafes, the square is the heart of town, and there's always something going on. As you go exploring here in town, you'll discover that there's a story around every corner. In the center of the square is the council house, where important decisions about the city were once made. Now it's home to Brașov's historical museum. Across the square from the council house is the Romanian Orthodox Cathedral, built in 1895. Though it tries to hide among the merchant buildings, it just can't help but stand out. Brașov's most famous landmark is the church you'll immediately see towering over Council Square in Old Town. First constructed in 1385, the church was nearly destroyed by fire twice, staining its walls almost black, and thus the name by which it's known, the Black Church. Just around the corner from the square is what many say is the narrowest street in Europe. It obviously wasn't built with cars in mind, since it's barely wide enough for two people to walk through at the same time. Talk about a tight squeeze. One of the things that stands out most about Brașov is how colorful it is. And I'm not just talking about the locals. Just walking down the streets, you can't help but notice all the different colored buildings here in town. As you explore Brașov, make sure to stop into the farmer's market, where fresh fruit and flowers can be purchased for a song. And talk about local color. But as they say, to truly know the people, you have to dine with them. So I decided to drop by one of the local restaurants for a taste of the real Romania. And boy, what a treat. There's nothing quite like authentic Romanian food accompanied by a band and traditional folk dancing. This dance is called the hora and is one of the most popular folk dances throughout Romania. And check out the traditional costumes. What a great way to spend an evening before venturing out to explore more of the Transylvanian countryside. As you can see, the Romanian people are quite proud of their culture and traditions. And as you travel further out into the Transylvanian countryside, its ties to the past are even more evident. Here's a tip. Brașov is an easy 2-hour drive from Bucharest, and the roads are excellent. Remember, it's illegal to use a cell phone while driving. Much of the countryside in Romania's province of Transylvania is used for agriculture. Its rolling hills and wide open fields nestled between the mountains are perfect for farming. And seeing the locals working out in the fields only adds to the romantic feel of this magical place. So it's easy to see how in this land of mountains and forests and ancient castles, stories of ghosts and fairy tales could survive through the ages. Stories of superstitions and vampires. Stories like, oh, let's say, the legend of Dracula. Not far from Brașov lies what most tourists come for, Rhein Castle, or as it's more commonly known, Dracula's Castle. According to legend, it was once home to Prince Vlad, the man who inspired the legend of Dracula. Although not as gothic and scary as I had imagined or seen in the movies, this castle did house a rather evil inhabitant. Vlad Dracula, or Vlad the Impaler as he came to be known for his brutal way of impaling his enemies' heads on spikes, was Prince of Romania in the mid-15th century. Revered for fighting off the Ottoman Empire, he was one of the most respected and feared rulers in Romanian history. But Dracula himself was still a mostly fictional character created by author Bram Stoker. After visiting this area in the late 1800s, Bram Stoker based his Dracula character on aspects of the Romanian prince's life and used Rhein Castle as the source and inspiration for Castle Dracula. Because of the stories following, the castle has been featured in several movies and TV shows about Dracula, and it's since become a wildly popular tourist attraction. Obviously not worried about getting a fang in the neck these days, visitors brave the long uphill climb to enter one of the most legendary castles in Europe. Sitting high on a cliff overlooking the picturesque town of Rhein, this amazing fortress has some spectacular views. But is it really scary? It figures. Rain. Cue the lightning, cue the thunder. Even now, hundreds of years later, there's kind of an eerie, ghostly feel to these dark hallways. The rooms and towers of the castle surround an inner courtyard, and in its center is the well that once provided fresh water for the castle. Deceivingly pleasant, I found the castle incredibly well preserved for its age. In fact, it was a renovation that uncovered a hidden piece of its darker past. The castle holds many secrets, one not revealed until 600 years later. A secret staircase hidden behind the fireplace, not discovered until 1927. In fact, several of the castle's rooms are connected to secret passages. Great for escaping or hiding from invaders, eh? I wonder how many more will someday be uncovered. Inside, you'll find a museum of medieval arts, filled with dark wood carvings and centuries-old furniture, ornate decorations and pottery. All authentic, by the way. This castle is full of mysteries to be discovered. Below the castle, at the bottom of the hill, lies the Bronze Castle Villa, which displays the types of cottages and equipment that were common to Romanian peasants a few hundred years ago. And here's where to see that capitalism has truly trumped communism in Romania. At the foot of the mountain, with the castle still in sight, you can find everything from Dracula t-shirts to vampire mugs. I knew I was dying for that. Fantastic. Here's a tip. While restaurant bills include tax and service, it's customary to leave an additional 5 to 10% extra. Transylvania is just one of the provinces where you'll discover centuries-old castles and medieval towns scattered throughout the countryside. One of the most popular destinations for tourists is an amazingly well-preserved walled-in town called Sighișoara. It dates back to the 3rd century BC. Now that's old. This was the center of town, the meeting point and where the main market was held. In fact, it's still the center of town. People still live here. This is the oldest medieval city in Europe that's still inhabited. The landmark of the city is the old clock tower, which stands at 200 feet tall, built in the 14th century. Today, it's a museum of history. Just below the clock tower is something really special and part of the legend that Transylvania is known for, Casa Vlad, Dracula's birthplace. Today, it's a restaurant and souvenir shop, but at one time, this house was once the home of a young Vlad Dracula. The word drac in Romania literally means devil or dragon. You see the dragon on the sign up here? Can you imagine Count Dracula as a little boy running in and out of this house? He literally was a little devil. Though the clock tower may be the most prominent building in town, the citadel in the historic center is the perfect place to get lost in the history of the city. I've been exploring, wandering, just looking around, taking a few pictures. It's so picturesque. Now I'm just gonna head back to the square if I knew which way it was. And of course, don't forget to stop into some of the local shops. Sighișoara is a great place to find traditional Romanian clothes and souvenirs. One thing Sighișoara is not short on is history. Stairs. Oh, that's a climb. Wow. 13th century, the 1200s, that's medieval. Can you imagine the Saxons running up and down these stairs in their armor and their swords and their helmets? If you think it's a tough climb today, try doing it with all that metal. At the top of the steps overlooking the town is the church on the hill. Built in 1345, it's well worth the climb to view the amazing frescoes and artwork inside. If the walls could talk, they'd reveal some great stories. One of the great stories I discovered up here was the divorce hut. Apparently, when a couple wanted a divorce, they were required to spend 2 weeks alone together in that hut. They had one pillow, one knife, one fork, one spoon, and the villagers brought them food. They stayed in there for 2 weeks, hammered out all their problems, and supposedly came out resolved. Well, in 400 years, not one couple who went in came out and got a divorce. Transylvania has castles and legends to die for, which they often did, and it's just one of the great places to discover here in Romania. Here's a tip: leave your passport in the hotel safe and carry a copy to avoid the risk of it being lost or stolen. On your drive from Bucharest to the Romanian province of Transylvania, there's one stop you'll have to make. Just south of Brașov, surrounded by beautiful mountains and nestled into the Prahova Valley, is one of Romania's oldest and most famous mountain resorts, called Sinaia. Often referred to as the Pearl of the Carpathians, it's home to what some consider to be the most beautiful castle in all of Europe. Wow, exactly what you wanted to see, isn't it? and it was way ahead of its time. It was the first castle in Europe to have central heating and electricity. No, really, around 1900 or so, they put a hydroelectric plant in the river. You can hear the river if you kind of listen. And then around 1910, 1914, the castle had electric lights, central heat, modern bathrooms with running water and flushing toilets, a vacuum cleaner system, a movie theater, and an electric elevator. Not just a pretty face. Called Pelish Castle, it was designed in a neo-Renaissance style. It is truly stunning both inside and out.
Here we are in the inner courtyard of the Pelish Castle, which was the summer residence of the first Romania's king, Carol I, and his wife Elizabeth.
Housing one of Europe's largest collections of artwork, Pelish Castle is now a museum open to tourists. Now, when you come here to visit the castle, what do you get to see?
The ground floor is open to the public. 14 pieces, the most representatives and the most impressive pieces in the castle.
These 14 rooms include the Hall of Honor, the Armory Room, where you begin to realize this is the real thing, the hall used for state receptions, and the King's Study. Not too bad of a place for the king to do a little royal business. Enhancing the magical appearance of Pelish Castle is its location. Perched at the foot of a mountainside, it's home to some of the most breathtaking views you'll ever see. When exploring new places and experiencing their culture, you never know just what kind of surprises you'll stumble across. For instance, did you know that Romania is one of the biggest producers of sparkling wine in all of Europe? Well, at the Rhein cellar in Azuga, not far from Pelish Castle, you can learn all about it.
We are now at the Rhein Cellars in Azuga. They were built at the end of 19th century, in 1892 to be more precise, by a German industrialist who worked here in this area, building these cellars for wine at the beginning, only for wine, and beginning with 1903. He started to produce champagne here.
But it's not really champagne.
Nowadays. Back then we can still call it champagne, but now we only can call it sparkling wine.
Though it's not called champagne now due to French legalities, he says the difference is only in the name.
It is produced by bottle fermentation. It's exactly as they're done in France or in any other part of the world.
And the Rhein cellar is the perfect place to see this process in action. Now, when visitors come here to the winery, what is it that they get to see and do?
In the first place, they get a cellar tour with our cellar master. They're explaining all the process, all our products, all about the history of the place, all about the wines. Of course, they can taste the sparkling wine. It's one of the best parts.
A tour through the winery is a fascinating inside look at the process of winemaking. And in case you want to extend your stay in wine country, the Rhein Cellars has several very comfortable rooms.
We have 15 rooms. They're great, they're very cozy, and the tourists can sleep overnight or for a longer period of time, enjoy our cellars and the region, because it's a very beautiful region of Romania and mountain region.
But for a real treat, be sure to make time for lunch. You get a lot of tours coming through here, and a lot of times they'll just come in for a wine tasting and for lunch. What do you serve for lunch?
We have some Romanian specialties. We try to give to our tourists something that is Romanian, something in common with our tradition.
Well, it's a great place to stop and a lot of fun.
Thank you for stopping here.
My pleasure. Let's go drink some champagne. I mean, sparkling wine. Well, there you have it. From wineries to medieval ruins to Dracula's castle, Transylvania is full of surprises, and not a vampire or a werewolf in sight. I'd say on the Laura McKenzie's scale of 1 to 10, I'd give Transylvania a 10 for sights, castles, and attractions. Getting around, 9. Food and drink, 9. Hotels, 7. And working up. Would I come back? I would, to continue exploring further into the more rural areas of Romania. Didn't I tell you Romania was great? I just wish we had more time because there's so much to see. I hope you did enjoy seeing it with me and that you'll join me again next time from another terrific place somewhere else around the world. Until then, I'm Laura McKenzie. Bye-bye.